Yo, what's up, legends? It's your boy, Chronos, back with part 2 of What If Deku Had Gravity Manipulation. And things are about to get even crazier. In this part, Deku's gravity powers are reaching new heights, and you're not going to want to miss how this all plays out. If you're enjoying the series, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're always in the loop. Let's crush 100 likes on this one for the next part. And thank you to all my legends for the continuous support. You guys are the real MVPs. Now, let's jump right into it and see where Deku's powers take him next. After the festival, in the recovery room, Recovery Girl fussed as she checked his vitals. You say you're fine, but your muscles are screaming. Midoriya gave a sheepish smile. Guess I pushed too hard. Pushing too hard'll get you in a coffin, she snapped, slapping a bandage onto his shoulder. Just then, Todoroki stepped in, arms wrapped in clean white gauze. He paused before Midoriya's bed, visibly awkward. Thanks, he said quietly. For what? Midoriya asked. For showing me I don't have to hold back anymore. For reminding me who I want to be. Midoriya smiled warmly. Next time, let's both go all out from the start. They clasped hands, no rivalry, just respect. Aizawa's insight. Up above the arena, Eraserhead stood with present Mike, watching a replay of the final match. He's dangerous, Aizawa said. Mike raised an eyebrow. Midoriya, know what he represents. He's not just strong, he's inspiring. That kind of pull, it attracts allies and enemies. Pro-hero buzz. Across Japan, agencies exploded with conversation. Pro-heroes sat at monitors, rewatching Midoriya's fight. Gravity quirk that manipulates directional fields? No, it's too refined. That kid's bending reality around himself. Who trained this kid? By nightfall, Midoriya's name was on every list in the country. Class 1A, changed atmosphere. Back in the classroom, the tension was different. Students kept glancing at him, whispering. Kirishima broke the silence. Bro, that black hole thing? You turned the battlefield into a space documentary. Zero chimed in, laughing. Seriously, you're like a living gravitational singularity. What are you even made of? Midoriya scratched his head. Protein shakes and stress? Uraraka smiled. Well, you crushed it. I was cheering the whole time. Only Bakugo remained distant. Arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He didn't say a word, but the fire in his gaze had intensified. Name selection, gravitas. In Midnight's class, it was time to pick hero names. Each student stepped up, one after another. Some names were silly, others hit hard. When it was Midoriya's turn, he quietly wrote 2 kanji on the board. Yinli in Ryoku, hero name, gravitas. It means gravity, but also weight, responsibility. That's what I want to carry. The class stared in respectful silence. Yairozu nodded. It suits you. Midnight smiled. Elegant and powerful. Approve. Internship invitations, mountains of options. Next morning, a literal mountain of internship offers sat on Midoriya's desk. He stared at it, overwhelmed. Kaminari whistled. Holy crap, dude. I got 6. You got what? 80. Midoriya didn't respond. His eyes were locked on one card in particular. Not the flashiest, not the boldest, just a name. Gran Torino. Todoroki noticed. I heard that guy used to work with All Might. Midoriya nodded. If anyone can help me control this power, it's him. Even Aizawa looked mildly surprised. Gran Torino, huh? You're in for something unique. Midoriya nodded with quiet conviction. Good. I need someone who sees beyond flash. I want to build a foundation strong enough to hold the weight of this quirk. All Might's reaction. All Might stood alone in the teacher's lounge, reading the same card. So you chose him, huh? He chuckled, a mix of pride and nervous sweat on his face. Well, problem child. Prepare for a crash course in pain. Meanwhile, in the shadows, far away, in a decaying bar lit by television glow, Shigaraki scowled as he watched the replay. Midoriya again. He's becoming the symbol for their next era. Kurogiri looked on. Do we move? Shigaraki's hands twitched. No, we wait. Then we'll drop him. Like gravity. Gran Torino's apartment was not what Izuku expected. He'd imagined a training dojo, or at least a place not covered in fish cakes. But the old man was already sprinting around the cramped room, faster than any retiree had any right to be. You're stiff, kid. You move like a satellite with a busted orbit. Midoriya blinked. Sir, that's technically accurate. Don't get smart with me. Gran Torino barked, flipping onto the ceiling with a grin. Training begins, weight of control. Unlike One for All's raw power, Midoriya's gravity quirk was subtle and wild. Gran Torino clapped his hands. The problem isn't power, it's balance. You bend space like it's paper, but you've got no structure. Midoriya focused. His hands trembled as he tried to increase gravity on a dumbbell. Grrrr, it wobbled, then collapsed into the floor with a crater. Gran Torino sighed. Too much. Again. They tried again and again. Midoriya practiced shifting the pull of gravity in specific directions, on objects, on himself, in midair. By the end of the first day, his nose was bleeding from the effort. The turning point. On the third day, Gran Torino tossed a dumpling across the room. Catch! Midoriya reached, but the food twisted away, pulled by sudden gravity fields he hadn't meant to activate. Gran Torino zipped behind him and slapped the back of his head. You're still reacting, not feeling it. I'm trying. Midoriya snapped. The room fell quiet. Gran Torino raised an eyebrow. Good. Get angry, but use it. He flipped off the wall and came in fast. Midoriya clenched his fists, not focusing on the movement, but the mass. He imagined shifting the gravity just behind Gran Torino. Whomp! The old man's dash faltered midair, and he crashed into the floor. A beat of silence passed. Heh! Now we're getting somewhere. Float like a comet, sting like a star. Each day, Midoriya improved. He learned to glide, using low gravity, zigzagging in the air like a meteor. He increased local gravity beneath opponents' feet to pin them down. He could even shift the center of gravity of an entire area, like tilting the battlefield itself. Gran Torino watched with growing interest. This quirk isn't just power, it's tactical. You're not a tank, kid. You're a force of nature. Meanwhile, in Hosu City, while Midoriya trained, chaos was brewing. Nomo-like creatures rampaged through the streets. Civilians screamed. Buildings crumbled. And in the heart of it, Ida Tenya chased his own demon. Stain, the hero killer, stood over a downed pro-hero, blade dripping with blood. You're not worthy of the title hero, he growled. None of you are. Ida roared, charging in with vengeance blinding him. Gran Torino joins the battle. Gran Torino and Midoriya had boarded a bullet train bound for Hosu, heading toward an internship lead. But the moment they arrived, the sky lit up with explosions. Gran Torino's expression turned grim. We're changing plans. He kicked through the train window mid-motion. Midoriya followed, manipulating his gravity to launch forward at full speed, wind howling past him. Hang on, Ida. The clash begins. Midoriya crashed into the alley, landing hard just as Stain raised his blade toward Ida. The hero killer paused, expression sharpening. Midoriya stood between him and Ida, eyes glowing with pressure, not fear. You're done here, Midoriya said. Stain's grin widened. Another fake hero clinging to power. Let's see what gravity does when I cut its strings. The clash between Midoriya and Stain was a dance of power and conviction. But as much as Stain prided himself on his skill with a blade, he hadn't accounted for one key factor: Midoriya's complete control over gravity. You can't win, Stain. Midoriya's voice rang out, calm yet unwavering. You're a force of destruction, but I won't let that be the only thing you leave behind. Stain's red eyes flashed, and he lunged, his blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Midoriya barely moved. He didn't need to. Jigakutabi. With a thought, the ground beneath Stain's feet collapsed. A wave of gravitational pressure slammed downward, pulling Stain beneath the earth, as if the very earth itself was swallowing him whole. Stain's eyes widened as his feet sunk into the ground, the weight of the gravity crush swallowing him in an instant. His body trembled as he fought to maintain his footing, but Midoriya's control over the pull was overwhelming. The hero killer gritted his teeth, but he couldn't escape. The ground groaned beneath him as the pressure built to a peak. That's the end of your fight, Midoriya said coldly. With a final crack, the ground closed in, and Stain's body went limp, unconscious. The arena of rubble that had once been a battleground was now eerily silent, with the hero killer buried beneath layers of crushed earth. Midoriya stood over the spot where Stain had been, breathing heavily but still calm. His gravity pulse had done its work. Todoroki's arrival. Just as Midoriya turned to check on Ida, a loud roar echoed through the streets. The sound of an explosion shook the air. Midoriya! A voice called from above. I'm here. Midoriya looked up just in time to see Todoroki descend from the sky, fire and ice swirling around him in perfect harmony. His entrance was flawless, the ice beneath him freezing the air while flames blazed along his back. Todoroki's eyes scanned the situation. The fight was over. Stain was down. The damage was already done. Did I miss the fun? Todoroki asked with a smirk, his flames dissipating into the air. Yeah, but I'm glad you're here, Midoriya said with a nod. He turned to Ida, who was still catching his breath. You're okay, right? Ida nodded quickly, though his eyes were filled with concern. I shouldn't have charged in like that. I should have waited for help. You didn't know, Midoriya reassured him. Stain's not easy to take on alone, but I'm glad you were here. You helped keep him off balance. Todoroki glanced over at the unconscious figure of Stain, then back at Midoriya. He's a dangerous guy, but it looks like you handled it. Midoriya didn't answer immediately. He simply gave Todoroki a brief, knowing look. Yeah, but next time, let's be ready for whatever comes at us. The arrival of the pro heroes. Before they could discuss further, the sound of sirens filled the air. The pro heroes who had been chasing the Nomu were now entering the scene. Gran Torino appeared, speeding past them and looking down at Stain's unconscious form buried beneath the rubble. He didn't even need to say anything. His expression said it all. You're a lot more capable than I thought, Gran Torino said with a smirk, his eyes narrowing in approval. But you've still got a lot to learn. The real work begins now. As the heroes moved in to contain the situation, Todoroki leaned in. That's the hero killer, right? He's been a problem for a long time. Midoriya nodded, but his gaze was far away, as if lost in thought. I'm not sure what his next move is, but I'm ready for it. Todoroki slapped him on the back. Don't get too cocky. We're all in this together. You did well, but next time, leave a few bad guys for me. Midoriya smiled. Deal. Hosu City, the aftermath. The chaos in Hosu City slowly began to calm down as the pro-heroes and authorities took control. Stain had been captured, and the Nomu had been subdued, but the damage done to the city was still extensive. The fight had been intense, but the heroes had proven they were more than capable of handling the situation. Midoriya looked out at the horizon, his body exhausted but his spirit unwavering. Gran Torino walked up to him, still as fast as ever despite his age. Not bad, kid, but you've still got a lot to learn about controlling that power of yours. And next time, don't get so reckless. I won't, Midoriya replied, nodding with a determined glint in his eyes. Todoroki caught up, wiping the last remnants of frost from his hair. So what now? You've taken down the biggest threat in the city, but the tournament is still ahead, right? Midoriya's eyes glinted. That's right, but right now we're heroes in training. We keep moving forward. Gran Torino shook his head but smiled. You've got the right attitude. Keep that up, and you'll be something special. After the chaos of Hosu City, the dust had finally settled. Midoriya and his classmates returned to UA High, the weight of their recent battles still hanging in the air. The events in Hosu City had shaken them, but now it was time to focus on what lay ahead. The final exams were upon them. The tension was palpable as Class 1A assembled in their homeroom, the usual buzz of energy replaced by a quiet anticipation. Aizawa entered the room, his eyes sharp as ever, and with a flick of his hand, he signaled the start of the final exams. This isn't going to be easy, he warned. You'll be tested on your abilities. Failure isn't an option if you want to continue here. The stakes are high, so take this seriously. The written exam. The written exam was no different than expected. Class 1A was handed their papers, and though some students were visibly nervous, others took the test with a quiet determination. Midoriya found himself scanning the questions, his mind racing as usual, with thoughts of how his power could improve his performance. Some students were caught off guard, like Kaminari, who occasionally shot a look at his paper, unsure how to answer. Others like Momo Yaoyorozu and Ida breezed through the questions with ease, their intellect and hard work paying off. Aizawa observed them with his usual disinterest, but even he seemed to approve of their effort. When the papers were collected and the results came in, it was clear that the class had performed well enough. Most students passed with flying colors. However, Kirishima and Kaminari were among those who failed, their nerves getting the best of them. A few others scraped by, but overall, the class was in a good position. The stage was set for the final exams. Class 1A had been preparing for weeks, and the time had come to face their greatest challenge yet. All Might. But this time, it wasn't just Deku's regular moves or his quirk alone that he would rely on. It was the full potential of his gravity manipulation, his sharp instincts, and his teamwork with Bakugo. The practical exam. The other fights. Before Midoriya and Bakugo faced All Might, the other practical exams were underway. Todoroki and Ida were up first against Vlad King. The two worked well together, Todoroki's dual ice and fire abilities countering Vlad King's quirk. Ida's speed and quick thinking allowed them to overpower him in the end. Next were Uraraka and Kaminari facing Sekijiro Kansas. With Uraraka's gravity manipulation and Kaminari's electric blasts, they worked in tandem to subdue their opponent, despite Kaminari's occasional blunders. Their teamwork ultimately led to a hard-fought victory. Kirishima and Zero took on Snipe, the sharpshooter. Kirishima's hardening and Zero's quick tape attacks kept Snipe from landing any precise shots, resulting in a victory for the duo. Momo and Shoji faced Gran Torino, an experienced pro hero. They used their teamwork and tactical thinking to defeat the speedy Gran Torino, managing to subdue him with some quick improvisation. The battle, Deku and Bakugo versus All Might. The tension in the air was palpable as Midoriya and Bakugo stood on the battlefield, staring at All Might, the symbol of peace. All Might was smiling, exuding his usual calm confidence. "All right, you two. Let's see what you've got." Without hesitation, Bakugo was the first to charge in. He detonated his explosion quirk in rapid succession, sending a barrage of blasts toward All Might. But All Might swiftly dodged, showing his incredible speed, his grin never fading. Bakugo scowled. "TCH, don't think I'm going easy on you, old man." He took to the air, using his explosions to launch himself toward All Might at high speed. "AP shot!" he yelled, firing a concentrated blast from his palms. Midoriya, however, had a different approach. He used his gravity manipulation to his advantage. Rather than charging in headfirst like Bakugo, Midoriya remained light on his feet, constantly shifting his gravity to outmaneuver All Might. "I won't give you a chance to dodge," Midoriya shouted. He shifted his gravity to increase his speed, suddenly appearing behind All Might. With a forceful gravity burst, he hit All Might with a powerful gravitational shockwave, sending him stumbling forward. All Might, however, was unfazed. He smiled widely. "You're both impressive, but I'm not going to hold back." All Might's next move was a Detroit Smash, his fist aimed directly at Midoriya. But Midoriya had anticipated the attack. Just as the punch came crashing toward him, he used his gravity manipulation to fly upward, narrowly avoiding the blow. Midoriya immediately dropped down with gravity-enhanced speed, attempting a direct strike. Meanwhile, Bakugo was already back in action, firing off more explosive blasts. He wasn't about to let All Might dominate the fight, especially not when Deku was holding his own. "I'll show you what I'm made of, All Might," Bakugo screamed, detonating a massive explosion right beneath All Might's feet, sending shockwaves through the arena. All Might staggered, but he was still standing strong. The attacks were beginning to take a toll on him, though, and he knew that he needed to finish this quickly. But Midoriya wasn't going to let that happen. He used gravity manipulation to alter the weight of the ground beneath him, increasing his own momentum and causing All Might to lose his footing for a moment. Midoriya took advantage of that moment, sending a powerful gravitational slam that crushed All Might into the ground, forcing him to take a knee. But Midoriya wasn't finished. He quickly adjusted the gravity beneath Bakugo, launching him toward All Might at high speed. With Bakugo now speeding toward All Might with even more force, Bakugo unleashed one final AP shot, a powerful, concentrated explosion that hit All Might dead on. For a moment, there was silence. Then All Might stood up, though slower now, breathing heavily. "Well done. You two really did it." But Bakugo and Midoriya weren't finished yet. Together, they pushed All Might to the limit. Midoriya adjusted the gravity around All Might's feet, making it heavier, while Bakugo kept him on the defensive with his explosive attacks. With that, they sent All Might crashing to the ground in an explosion of sound. The aftermath. All Might lay on the ground, panting but smiling. "You two have really outdone yourselves." Midoriya and Bakugo, both exhausted, stood over him. The battle had been grueling, but they had done it. They had beaten All Might. All Might slowly pushed himself to his feet, giving them both a nod of approval. "You've both earned my respect today. I think you're ready for whatever challenges lie ahead." Bakugo grunted but couldn't suppress a small grin. Yeah, you weren't so tough after all. Midoriya, still catching his breath, smiled. Thanks, All Might. We couldn't have done it without each other. All Might gave them both a warm look. You too. You've made me proud. With that, the battle was over. They had passed the practical exam, and the students of Class 1A were now one step closer to becoming true heroes. After the intense final exams, Class 1A was exhausted, but there was no time to rest. Aizawa stood before the class, his gaze unwavering. All of you who failed the exams will have an extra lesson during the forest training camp, he said sternly. Prepare yourselves. It won't be easy. The students groaned, but they understood. Aizawa's definition of extra lesson was never something to take lightly. The arrival, wild pussycats. The next day, Class 1A boarded a bus, heading to the forest training camp deep in the mountains. The journey was long, but the students were restless, anticipating what was to come. However, their ride came to a sudden halt, and the bus lurched forward. Everyone inside braced themselves. What's going on? Kaminari asked, wide-eyed. Before anyone could respond, the bus doors swung open, revealing a trio of figures standing in front of them. The students stared, blinking in surprise. A woman with cat ears and a tail grinned widely. Hello, everyone. We are the Wild Pussycats, and we'll be your instructors for the training camp. The woman introduced herself as Ragdoll, with her wild, black hair and cat-like features. She was joined by two other instructors, Tiger, a tall cat person with a sharp gaze, and Pixie Bob, a shorter woman with a playful grin. They were ready to guide the students through the training camp. We're here to give you the best training of your lives, Pixie Bob said, waving her hand enthusiastically. No more messing around. This is serious business. Thrown into the forest. Without much explanation, the Wild Pussycats threw Class 1A into the forest. The students, separated into smaller groups, were forced to adapt to their surroundings quickly. Deku, Kirishima, Zero, and Uraraka formed one team, while the others scattered into their respective teams. All right, listen up. Deku called to his team, already scanning the dense forest around them. We need to be prepared for anything. Stay close, watch your surroundings, and be ready to fight if we're attacked. The forest was eerily quiet for a moment, but that peace didn't last long. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and massive stone golems began to rise from the earth. The towering creatures, some the size of a two-story building, roared as they came to life, their stone fists swinging toward the students. Deku takes the lead. Meteor shower. Without hesitation, Deku moved forward, his gravity manipulation already in full effect. Kirishima hardened his body, ready to fight, while Zero and Uraraka took positions to support him. Stay back. I've got this, Deku shouted, adjusting his gravity to give him extra speed. Deku launched himself into the air with a burst of speed, shifting his gravity to make it feel almost weightless. He reached into the forest's canopy, effortlessly uprooting several massive trees from the ground. The trees groaned as their roots tore free from the earth. He held them in the air, eyes focused, as he prepared his next move. Meteor shower, Deku shouted. The trees shot down like missiles, slamming into the golems with tremendous force. The first tree crashed into a golem's shoulder, breaking it into a heap of rocks. But the golem only paused for a moment before retaliating, its stone fists swinging toward Deku. Deku wasn't done yet. Using his gravity burst, he propelled himself higher into the air, out of range of the golem's strikes, and began hurling more trees at the remaining golems. The trees rained down like meteors, crashing into the golems with such force that the earth trembled under the impact. The first golem was shattered to pieces. The others took several hits, cracks forming across their rocky bodies. But they didn't go down easily. Other students fight. As Deku continued to battle the golems, the other teams were also engaged in their own fights with the massive creatures. Todoroki stood firm against one of the golems, using his ice quirk to freeze the golem's feet to the ground, slowing its movement. Bakugo stood beside him, his hands glowing with the intense heat of his explosions. Don't get in my way, Ice King, Bakugo shouted, unleashing a barrage of explosions directly at the golem's face. The golem stumbled backward as the blast hit, but it wasn't defeated yet. Todoroki followed up by creating a massive ice spear from the ground and thrusting it straight into the golem's chest. That's how it's done, Todoroki muttered, glancing at Bakugo with a nod. Meanwhile, Mina and Kaminari fought together against another golem. Mina used her acid quirk, coating the golem's legs in a layer of acid to weaken it, while Kaminari followed up with his electricity, shocking the golem with enough voltage to fry its systems. It wasn't enough to destroy the golem, but it weakened its movements, giving Mina a chance to launch herself into the air and land a crushing blow with her acid on its chest. The golem stumbled, losing its balance and collapsing to the ground. The final blow. Back with Deku, he saw that the last of the golems was almost down. His heart raced as he adjusted his gravity one last time, lifting more trees from the earth to ensure a finishing blow. He looked over to Kirishima, who was still on the front lines. "Ready, Kirishima?" Deku called. "Yeah, let's finish this." Kirishima grinned, jumping into the fray with his hardening quirk. Together, they hurled the trees into the last remaining golem, crashing down with an explosion of sound. The golem collapsed into rubble, defeated. Deku breathed heavily, his gravity manipulation draining his energy, but he was satisfied with the outcome. The forest was quiet once again, the students standing among the wreckage of the stone golems. "Well, that was certainly intense," Kirishima said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But we made it through." Deku nodded, taking a moment to catch his breath. "We're not done yet. Keep your guard up. We don't know what's next." The students of Class 1A arrived at the forest training camp, their bodies aching from the previous battles. Everyone was exhausted from the fight with the golems, but the training had only just begun. The tasks: cleaning, cooking, and chores. Once they reached the camp, the wild pussycats immediately gave them their first task: chores. Ragdoll, Pixie Bob, and Tsubasa stood before the class, pointing to various areas around the camp. "All right, heroes in training." Ragdoll grinned mischievously. "Before we get to the fun stuff, we need you to pitch in and help with some basic camp chores. It's time to clean up, chop wood, set up tents, and prepare meals." "What? This isn't what we signed up for?" complained Kaminari, his usual cheerful attitude waning as he glanced at the pile of work. "I'm with Kaminari," Kirishima added, chuckling nervously, rubbing the back of his head. Despite the grumbling, the students got to work. Todoroki silently worked on chopping wood, his half-cold, half-hot powers making it look effortless. Bakugo was his usual self, complaining loudly but getting the job done, with a little less subtlety than the others. Uraraka and Mina took charge of setting up the tents, while Shiro worked on cleaning up around the campgrounds, using his tape to help organize. Deku, as always, took to his work with enthusiasm. He helped Mina and Uraraka with the tent setup, then volunteered to assist with the cooking, utilizing his control over gravity to lift and move large pots and pans around. The hot springs incident. After a full day of tasks, the students were granted some relaxation time. They headed to the hot springs located at the edge of the camp. The students could finally let their tired muscles rest in the steaming waters, enjoying a brief moment of peace. However, the tranquility didn't last long. As the students settled into the hot spring, the mischievous Mineta couldn't resist. He crept to the edge of the spring, his eyes gleaming as he peered over the rocks at the girl's side of the bath. Heh, this is the life," Mineta muttered to himself, completely oblivious to the fact that he was standing too close to the boy's side. That's when Koda, the quiet, anti-heroic boy who had joined them from the Wild Pussycats group, appeared. He had a fierce look on his face as he walked toward Mineta. Before Mineta even realized what was happening, Koda suddenly poked him in the eyes, causing Mineta to stagger backward. "Ow! What the hell, kid?" Mineta shouted, rubbing his eyes. Koda stood there with a cold glare. "You're disgusting." His words were sharp and full of contempt. Koda lost his balance. He would have fallen straight into the hot springs, but before he could do so, Izuka quickly reacted. "Koda!" Izuka shouted, his eyes catching the scene. Using his gravity manipulation, Izuku immediately pulled himself toward Koda, who was falling dangerously on the edge of the spring. Izuku extended his gravity range, reaching out to grab Koda just in time, pulling him to them and away from the ledge. "Gotcha," Deka said, his voice relieved. Koda looked up at him, his eyes wide for a moment before the boy quickly turned his head away, trying to hide his face. He wasn't one for being in the spotlight. "I didn't need your help," Koda muttered quietly, no gratitude in his voice, just cold indifference. Talk with Mandalay. Later, after the incident, Mandalay pulled Deku aside, noticing his concern for Koda. "Izuku," Mandalay began, her voice soft yet serious, "Koda, he's a special case. He doesn't like heroes, not one bit." It's because of his past. Izuku tilted his head, sensing that there was more to the story. What do you mean? I've never seen him so angry. Mandalay sighed, crossing her arms. Koda's parents were heroes, you know. His mother, Koda's father, was one of the greatest, but they were killed by villains during an attack when he was just a child. The hatred he feels toward heroes, it stems from that tragedy. He blames them for his parents' deaths. To him, heroes aren't saviors. They're people who only bring pain. Izuku's expression softened with understanding, though it was a weighty realization. So he doesn't trust anyone? Deku asked quietly. Exactly, Mandalay said, giving a small, sad smile. He won't even admit it, but he sees all heroes as liars. He thinks they're just out for fame, and that their actions don't bring real change. It's going to take time before he understands that not all heroes are the same. Izuku was silent for a long moment, processing the information. I'll try my best to show him. Heroes can be different. Training begins. The next morning, after a restless night of thinking about Koda's backstory, Deku woke up early, eager to improve his skills. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the mountainous landscape, Deku made his way to the highest peak near the camp. He needed to extend his gravity range even further. He had already made significant progress in controlling his gravity manipulation, but there were limits he still hadn't broken. The wind whipped around him as he reached the summit, breathing deeply to steady himself. All right, Izuku muttered to himself, his voice low but determined. Time to push my limits. With a focused expression, he began experimenting with extending his gravity's influence, adjusting his mental focus and trying to pull larger objects. This time, he aimed not only to manipulate the environment around him, but also to sense the distance at which he could control objects. As he practiced, the ground beneath him began to shake, and small boulders lifted into the air as Deku slowly expanded his gravity range. The concentration required was intense, but the more he focused, the more control he gained. I'm getting closer, Izuku muttered, pushing his limits as the rocks lifted higher into the air. He wasn't done yet. He could feel there was more to uncover, more power to harness. Class 1 as morning training. Back at camp, the other students were also preparing for their own training sessions. The atmosphere was a mixture of determination and exhaustion. The wild pussycats had set up a series of tasks for them to improve their individual abilities, and everyone was giving it their all. Todoroki's ice and fire balance. Todoroki was nearby, facing a sheer cliff wall. His left side glowed a cold blue while his right side smoldered with heat. He focused intently, creating a wall of ice that shot up rapidly from the ground. With a flick of his right hand, fire shot out, melting the ice midair before he quickly reshaped the water into a new form. He was working on controlling both his ice and fire powers simultaneously, something he hadn't fully mastered before. The heat from his right side mixed with the cold from his left in a spectacular display of raw power. Still, Todoroki's expression was serious, and his progress was slow but steady. Not bad, he muttered to himself. He clenched his fist, controlling the fire more smoothly this time. But I need more. I can't rely on just one side anymore. Bakugo's explosion mastery. Not far away, Bakugo was letting off a massive blast of explosions into the trees, shaking the forest with the sheer force. He was pushing himself harder than ever to refine his explosion control. Die already, you damn trees, he shouted, his explosive personality as explosive as his quirk. The young hero wasn't satisfied with just using his explosions for offense. He was experimenting with using his quirk more creatively, launching himself across the forest, increasing the power of his explosions to create shockwaves that rippled through the trees. This isn't enough. I need to control the blast radius better. Less damage, more precision, Bakugo grumbled under his breath, his explosive moves becoming more refined. He wasn't just angry at his situation, he was channeling that rage into perfecting his skill. Uraraka's zero-gravity mastery. On the other side of the camp, Uraraka had set up several boulders. She was practicing her zero-gravity quirk by lifting multiple objects simultaneously. She had already learned how to control individual objects, but today, she was working on lifting multiple objects without tiring herself out. I can do this. I can do this, she muttered, focusing hard. Slowly, a few large rocks hovered in the air, but Uraraka was visibly straining. She clenched her teeth, eyes narrowed with determination. She let out a frustrated sigh and took a step back. All right, just focus. Control the flow of your power. She held her hands up again, and with a determined exhale, she lifted the rocks into the air. They floated effortlessly, and Uraraka smiled. I did it. I'm improving Kirishima's durability training. Meanwhile, Kirishima was working on his own strength. He was practicing hardening his body, but not just in terms of defense. He was trying to test his limits on how much he could take in a fight. To do this, he was throwing himself at trees, smashing his hardened body against the trunks to see how much force he could absorb and withstand. His fist collided with the bark, the impact shaking his entire body, but he just stood there, grinning. "Yeah, that's the way to do it," he shouted as the trunk cracked, the bark splintering into pieces. "If I can take these hits and keep going, I'll be unstoppable." Mina and Siro's teamwork. At another part of the camp, Mina and Siro were focusing on team exercises. Mina would launch her acid in concentrated streams, trying to fine-tune her control and accuracy, while Siro would use his tape to create barriers or shields to block her attacks. They worked together, with Mina trying to strengthen her control over her quirk's acid, adjusting the acidity levels for different purposes. Siro worked on improving his defensive tactics, using his tape to block incoming acid streams while also ensuring his own movements were quick and precise. "Hey, Siro, look out," Mina warned as a blob of acid shot toward him. Siro deftly dodged, using his tape to swing himself into a better position. "Gotcha," Siro responded as he launched a quick counterattack with his tape. "Nice shot, Mina, but you still need to work on keeping it more concentrated." Ida's speed and agility. Ida was sprinting through the forest, pushing his legs to their limits. He used his engine quirk to propel himself at breakneck speeds, dodging obstacles and trees along the way. He would practice stopping abruptly to test his control over his speed, then push himself again into a new burst of momentum. "I will be faster than ever," he shouted, his legs spinning like a blur. "I'll improve my speed and my precision. The next time I race, I'll leave everyone in the dust." And that's a wrap on What If Deku Had Gravity Manipulation. Part 2. I hope you're all as hyped as I am for what's coming next. Don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you want more, and subscribe if you're not already part of the Legends crew. Your support means everything to me. You guys keep me going. Until next time, stay legendary and keep pushing forward.